Welcome to the Loaded Box Podcast.
Where we never finish first because we finished last.
Thank you once again for tuning in to the Loaded Box Podcast. I am Ben Morgan. That's DJ Primo. And so when DJ and I record these, we do it over Google Hangouts. And I just see him, and he looks a little tired today. And I feel like you might be tired because you were up all night getting into Twitter battles about Derek Carr.
Man, I was Twitter battling. Literally, like, it started at my supper time. I Twitter battled through, like, supper, through putting my kid to bed and giving him a bath. All that. I was literally in Twitter battles the whole entire night. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I just want to give you a couple minutes, however long it takes. If I get sick of it, I'll cut you off. But I want to hear your stance on Derek Carr. I want it to be out in the public. If people are saying, like, why do you feel this way about Derek Carr? We can just say, hey, listen to the first couple minutes of the podcast. I need to just vent. I want you to vent.
I'm venting now?
Go ahead.
Okay,
Let's go on a rant.
I'm prepared for this. Well, I mean, it comes down to this. The season tells the story. The team was winning games when Derek Carr was out on the field. He's out there winging it. He's a potential MVP candidate. And that MVP candidate talk even rose up higher once he went out, and the team was severely worse.
They were trash
when he left. They were awful.
They're probably
so
they're probably like a bottom 5 team in the league, bottom 10 for sure.
And the thing I love most about Derek Carr, his offensive line is great. Somebody said everybody knows that he's so good because his offensive line is good. I'm like, that does not make the quarterback any better than what they are. They still have to read defenses and throw a ball and make good decisions. But he has a great release. He has one of those quick, like, Aaron Rodgers releases. If you actually watch Derek Carr, he has a quick release. He's got the quick strip muscles, but he also, despite having one of the worst D-backs, one of the worst defensive backfields in all of football, still managed to win 12 games, which I don't understand how people are saying that's a lucky 12 or they played more like a 9 and 17.
Isn't that arguably the best division in the AFC?
Yeah, exactly. It's like he was beating the Chiefs, the Broncos, and the Chargers like consistently, and those are maybe the 3 hardest teams. I mean, the 4 hardest combination of teams in any division in football. Like, I can't even think of one other division that's better because It's not the NFC East or NFC West anymore.
Right. At one point, it looked like 3 teams from that division were going to make the playoffs last year. Like, it was a realistic thing.
Yeah.
And like you said,
the guy had to air it all last year. They didn't have a consistent running back. So everybody's arguing the running game, but they don't have a consistent running back that was able to read holes. Their run game will improve this year because their offensive line is so good, and Marshawn Lynch is actually a consistent running back. But that's just going to make Derek Carr that much better, to have that much better of a running threat consistently. So I don't understand how anybody's even arguing against him, especially with like Mariota and Winston, which amazes me when I'm putting him in the top 5 of all quarterbacks in the league. So it's to me, it's just really frustrating at some of these arguments I was seeing.
Well, at least we have this documented now, and so if anyone comes at us, you can just be, hey, check out the first 4 minutes of the podcast, and you can have some.
And I want to be the first podcast. Well, maybe not the first, but I don't hear anybody else do it. You hear all these guys make their predictions on TV and stuff, but I'm going to make a document that has my predictions, your predictions, and then both of the ones that we agree on, and I'm going to track them throughout the year so I can tell you guys how right I am about everything later in the year or as the year goes on.
Let's make that document editable, too, so we can change it and make them all right. I'm good with that.
I'm going to actually start making that document today. So
nice. Well, there's a little bit of insight on DJ and his prediction and his stance on Derek Carr. We did do our top 12 fantasy quarterbacks heading into 2017 last week. So if you want to hear that and you haven't listened yet, be sure to check that out. But this week, we are going to the position of running back, and we're ranking our running backs numbers 13 through 24. So one of our next episodes then obviously will be 12 through 1. Well, let's kick it off right away with running backs 13 through 24. We'll do it the same way we did last week.
All right. Shouldn't you say 12 through 24 through 13 and then 12 through 1?
Yeah, probably, technically.
All right, so I'll start at number 13.
Yeah.
I feel like I looked at your rankings and my rankings, and there are going to be a lot of big differences. But honestly, I had texted you before, and anything after 10, it just gets weird. It's just a matter of preference, I think, is what you're going to see consistently through all rankings throughout everybody's predictions in the NFL or the fantasy football world.
Well, especially at running back, I think, too, because you have so many running back by committees. And
exactly.
You might have a stance like, oh, this person's going to get a 50-50 share, and the other person's going to get a 70-30. And then it could be like a Patriot situation where you don't have any idea.
No idea. And then there's so many, this year, there's so many rookie running backs drafted that you don't know what role they're going to play either. So that's like one of the most running backs I've seen drafted that have a chance to like play a role,
an impact fantasy wise.
You don't know how they're gonna affect guys when it comes to like Samaje Perine, Joe Mixon, Kamara,
Cook,
all those
Fournette,
guys.
McCaffrey.
We obviously know what Fournette's gonna do. McCaffrey, all those guys. So.
Yeah.
All right, so here we go. I'm just gonna go through them real quick. At 13, I have LeGarrette Blount. 14, I have Jay Ajayi. 15, Eddie Lacy. 16, I have your boy, Lamar Miller, who's severely lower than what I'm sure you have him.
Yeah. I won't be able to talk about him today. Let's put it that way.
16, Amir Abdullah.
I want you to stop right there because I don't have Abdullah ranked in my top 24. If you give me a second here, I've got Abdullah as my running back 31. I'm not low. I shouldn't say I'm not low on him because according to my rankings, I am a little low on him. But I want you to dive in a little bit there with Abdullah, just because I was high on him last year. He's never really been able to stay healthy. I think the potential is there, but there's just something about him right now that I can't justify putting him up in my top 24. So why do you like Abdullah?
So one of my biggest things going into every ranking year is I try not to consider injuries as like potential. If they're healthy right now, I'm going to not consider potential injuries as something that I'm going to rank them lower. So I'm assuming that every one of these running backs that is healthy currently is going to be healthy during the season because predicting an injury or not predicting an injury is just impossible. So I just make the assumption that he's going to be healthy for 16, 17 weeks or 16 weeks is what he's going to be playing. So I take that into the fact with just his potential. I mean, there's really no three-down running back on that team besides Amir Abdullah, and he can play first, second down, and he catches the ball out of the backfield as well. Theo Riddick is not a guy who makes me nervous. He's more of a slot wide receiver on that team, and that's where they typically use him.
Yeah.
So even if he's on the field, I feel like Abdullah would be on the field at the same time a lot of times. But just I've watched the guy run for years, and when he is out there, he reads holes. He's a slippery running back. He's small. He has on the offensive line. The only area I'm most worried about him is scoring touchdowns. So I think that's where maybe you could rank him a little bit lower. Is you're going to need big splash plays from him to score touchdowns, but I think you're going to see lots of receiving yards, lots of rushing yards out of this guy. Higher in PPR, but I still like him at what I have him at 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. It's like RB2, I guess.
Yeah, and you talked about him. You talked about not being able to rank guys based on injuries, and I agree. I don't want to predict an injury or say, "Oh, this guy's going to be ranked lower because he has an injury past." But don't you ever have that thing where you just get burned one year by a guy in fantasy, and maybe he got hurt the year before that as well, and it's just like you just kind of avoid him, and it's not like you're doing it because you don't think he's a good talent. Sammy Watkins comes to mind. I've drafted him before. When he plays, he's productive, but he's questionable every single week. So you always have that. Do I need to make a change? Do I even want to start him this week because he's questionable? Like that comes into play. I almost feel like I'd rather take a guy that is going to be more consistent. So I don't change too much on rankings, but to say that it doesn't factor into my decision whatsoever, it does factor into mine.
It's just if it's something that's not hampering them anymore and it's completely resolved, I don't try to think about it. But if it's something lingering where it's like a Rob Gronkowski, any type of back injury, then yes, I'm going to consider it because that's a serious thing that's consistently coming back and coming back. Abdullah doesn't have that type of injury where other guys do. And that's why I'm not considering him any type of injury risk, except for the fact that he's just been unlucky for first 2 years of his NFL career.
Did
Same with Keenan Allen.
Well, very much like Keenan Allen. It's pretty
Yeah.
similar in that sense. Did Abdullah have any injuries or miss a lot of time at Nebraska ever?
No, he played almost. I don't remember him being out at all. Actually, at
So
Nebraska.
this is more of a recent thing, kind of just
Yeah,
riddled by injuries in the NFL.
that's pretty much what it's been.
Okay.
So what was that, number 17 I said?
Yep.
So 18 I have Tevin Coleman. He's an interesting one as well. But then I have Kenneth Dixon, who I could be ranking too high, but I'm valuing him higher because I think he's going to be the main cog there in Baltimore, even with Danny Woodhead there.
That's I wanna bring that up because Baltimore, just in general, their offense is a little bit staggering at times. They don't really have that go-to receiver yet. They just have a bunch of guys that are hype, like Mike Wallace is the deep threat. Brashard Perriman, who knows what he is because he doesn't get to play. They just got Macklin, so there's going to be a little bit of disconnect, maybe a bit of a learning curve between Flacco and Macklin. And then now they have Weston Dixon, and now they're throwing in a guy like Woodhead. So in my mind, it's still an average offense with a lot of clutter. So for any of those guys to be an RB2 for me, which obviously in 13 through 24, that's where we're ranking them. I can't justify that. So I just want to know what makes Dixon like a mid-level RB2 for you.
I just think that he's going to get. You could see towards the end of the season he started getting more and more carries, and I think that's going to continue into this next season. I think they're going to run him a lot. The pass game to me just seems like a problem. So Joe Flacco's not elite, right? So I think they're going to need to run the ball, and he's going to be the guy. I think they're going to go and narrow it down to focusing on one guy to carry the rock, and then Danny Woodhead will mix it on the third down. Obviously, they're going to use Danny Woodhead as a third down back, but he's also going to get majority, if not all, of the goal line carries and get you a good amount of touchdowns. So he's a running back that they like coming out of college. This is only his second year. So
Right.
I'm higher on this. I'm higher this year than I was last year on him, and thank God, because I know lots of people I know you were pretty high on Kenneth Dixon last year.
Yeah.
This season, so I'm higher this year on him than I was last year, just for the reason that he's starting to get more. He knows the offense better. They see what they have out of him, and I think between Dixon and Woodhead, it's going to be mainly those two guys with him getting all the goal line carries.
So this is how my Ravens backfield shakes out. I've got Danny Woodhead at number 32, so as an RB3.
Yep.
And then I've got Kenneth Dixon at ranked 39th, so an RB4.
Yep.
And then I've got Terrence West all the way down to 55 as an RB5 because I don't – that's obviously just a bench fill-in in a deeper league. I'm not really going to consider him. But that's a really big difference, though. I mean, you have an RB2, I have him as an RB4. It's
just, again, it's like I said beforehand, it's preference.
It really is. But I don't know, man. And where do you have Woodhead? Do you have any idea where you'd have Woodhead?
I don't have him on here yet. I've got to see how I feel like he fits. I was thinking about this just a little bit ago. I don't know how he's going to fit in this Ravens offense that I hate. I just don't know. I've never seen them use running backs in Joe Flacco era in like a passing capacity. I just don't know.
They really haven't. That's the thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know how he's going to fit in there. So I don't know where to put him because I don't know how they're going to use him. It'll be interesting.
I almost wonder if it's an opportunity for Flacco to get better though.
Flacco doesn't check down; he throws deep.
maybe he can learn though. It's something where it's they simplify the offense for him, make him do a little bit more checks down. His completion percentage goes up, and just therefore, maybe he'll be better at throwing the ball down the field if he dinks and dunks for a little while. And
yeah, he'll just throw the ball through Danny Woodhead. He'll throw fucking rockets at him. That's all he knows how to do is just throw it as hard as he can. So Danny Woodhead's going to be hurt before you know it.
Yeah, probably.
His balls are being gunned at his face.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not in love with that entire team, so that's why I'm kind of have them all lower.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then at number 20, I have Carlos Hyde. I know people are going to be low on him. I'm weirdly high on him every year. I like his skill set. I know he has injury problems, but I guess I would be more worried about their offensive line, but they're improving through draft, and I could see they're going to run a lot more. They're going to run a lot this year. This flat out, they're going to run the ball.
Yeah.
And they don't have who is their quarterback? Blaine Gabbert. So they're going to be running the ball this year. I really like his.
No, they have. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Hoyer.
Oh, awesome! Even better. Anyways, so I've got Hyde at number 20, Mark Ingram 21, Jonathan Stewart. This is where you start to see my old consistent guys a couple of times. Jonathan Stewart, number 22, Ty Montgomery, 23, and Spencer Ware, 24.
Okay. I'll dive into mine, and you can feel free to interject at any point. A guy that you didn't have, because I'm assuming he's an RB1 for you, is Todd Gurley. But for me, he's a guy that's on a bad offense. But at the end of the day, he's still their best offensive weapon, but I'm probably going to avoid him. You have to have him ranked that high because of his skill set.
Yeah, absolutely. He's in my
At number 14, a guy that you did not have, and I'm almost thinking you don't have him as an RB1.
I do have him as an RB1.
You do? Okay. Well,
yeah.
It's Marshawn Lynch of the Raiders, and I don't like the fact of a guy taking a year off and coming back and expecting to be what he was. I don't really see that as a realistic thing. You talked about maybe he is on a team with a good offensive line where there are going to be opportunities, and he probably is the guy, but I don't know. I'm not jumping anyone to get up and get into the Lynch sweepstakes. I'm not that confident in it. A guy that I do like at number 15 is Spencer Ware, and I really like him despite the drafting of Kareem Hunt. Last year, he had double-digit carries in all but one game. I think he's kind of that model of consistency there. I like Ware. We know that Kansas City's going to run the ball. It's still Alex Smith's team for the time being, and while Alex Smith is the quarterback, they're a running team.
And that's the other thing I wanted to mention about Alex Smith and our other podcasts. It's like everybody's so high on Tyreek Hill, like Alex Smith is all of a sudden going to grow this magic arm and start throwing the ball down the field. I think that's hilarious as well. So
right, that's for a podcast.
For all you Tyreek Hill fans,
in the future, we'll get there.
That.
Number 16, a guy that you're not as high on. I have Christian McCaffrey. I really like him in a PPR. I think to begin the year, you're going to get some Jonathan Stewart. I don't think there's any denying that. But I think as the season goes on, I think McCaffrey's going to be the guy that you want if you have a running back in that backfield. So I got McCaffrey at 16. 17, I've got all day Adrian Peterson. For me, Adrian Peterson, I believe he has something left in the tank. I think it's a tricky situation with Mark Ingram there, but there's no way in my eyes that Peterson's a forgotten man. And for the first time in his career, he doesn't have to worry about being the center of attention because he's got the Drew Brees factor. And I think at this point in Peterson's career, playing with an elite quarterback like that is going to make him better. So he might have disappeared a little bit last year when he did play. He maybe lost a step, but I still have to believe one of the best running backs ever still has a little bit left in the tank.
Yeah, I don't know. That was a hard choice for me to decipher, but the more I thought about it, and I've mentioned it before, it's hard for me to do Adrian Peterson over Ingram because this is Ingram's team, really. It's tough.
That's one of the questions I have for you is why do you prefer Ingram to Peterson?
Yeah.
Just because I agree with you, man. Like, who's been disrespected more as a running back right now than Mark Ingram? He's performed really well when he's gotten opportunities, but they always seem to bring in a guy that's competing with carries, and he just doesn't get the workload he can handle a big workload, and B, he's proven that he actually produces when he's been given the ball. So I don't know. I almost see this as the Saints. It was their opportunity to get a really good running back, and I feel like they think he still has something left in the tank. So. And let me see where I have Ingram ranked here real quick. Because I don't think I'm super low. I've got him at running back 27. So he's an early running back 3 for me. So I'm not super low on him. I'm going to give AP the nod here. Number 18, pretty much right around where you have him, I have Tevin Coleman. If you look at just his production from his rookie year to last year, it was quite the jump. He only had a couple of touchdowns his rookie year. I think he was up to 11 last year. I think that production is going to keep happening. Of all split backfield situations, so I think the Ingram-Peterson is going to be a pretty good split, but Coleman-Freeman obviously has 2. I think of those split situations, Coleman would be the guy that I would actually target and seek out and get.
Yeah, I mean, they're almost a 50-50 at this point. I could see them, like, they were like a 40-60 last year, and at this point it's just going to be like 50-50. It's just going to be more opportunities for Coleman, I feel like, each year now. And that's why I feel like Devontae Freeman eventually isn't going to be on this team.
Maybe that's a bold prediction. We'll get to Freeman in our next podcast, but I don't know. I'm pretty high on Coleman. It took me a while to come around on him. I didn't really like him that much last year, but just looking into a little bit more, that's a guy that I'm actually going to seek out, who's in our running back by committee that I'm more than happy to have him on my team. Number 19, Mike Gillislee, crowded backfield. But I'm not surprised if he gets double-digit touchdowns this year.
They have 80 damn running backs.
They do, but remember being a LaShawn McCoy owner last year, just how pissed off you'd get at Mike Gillislee?
Only at like the end of the year, though.
Yeah, true, but he took away quite a few points because he was vulturing all those touchdowns.
Yeah, but they have fucking 4 running backs. They have Rex Burkhead, Mike Gillislee, James White, and Dion Lewis.
Yeah, but who's going to fill that blunt role? That's Gillislee.
Rex Burkhead, duh.
No way. Dude, I feel like he's going to be the guy that gets the most touchdowns, and when it comes to fantasy, give me the guy that gets the touchdowns. So I have Gillislee ranked 19th. I've got Carlos Hyde 20th, kind of like you. He's a good running back on a shitty team. He went on a stretch early last year, if you remember, where he was getting touchdowns and he was making everyone that drafted him look pretty smart, and then he just kind of disappeared. So not a guy that I'm super excited about. But like you said, he's the guy on a team that's going to run the ball a lot. So I got Hyde at 20. Joe Mixon, 21. And I think the great unknown of a rookie running back and a Bengals running back, the combination of that is what keeps him from cracking my top 20. I have questions about their offensive line. They lost one of the best guards in the NFL in Kevin Zeitler. There's just, if you look at the last couple of years too with the Bengals, pretty much ever since Dalton's been there, it's just been kind of inconsistency from the running back. I mean, Jeremy Hill had double-digit touchdowns, but
that's it.
That's it. No yards per carry. It's just all this kind of like goal line work. So I'm not really comfortable with our Bengals running back at this point. And I said it on Twitter earlier. This is probably the guy that I've been most up and down on recently. I started down, then all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? I'm going to buy into the Mixon hype. And then just the more I thought about it, and just from watching a lot of football, there are situations where your running back is really dictated by the offensive line play. Look at Jay Ajayi last year. That was a guy that, when the offensive line was healthy, he was averaging nearly 20 fantasy points per game. The offensive line obviously wasn't healthy at some point in the middle of the season. His average went from like 20 fantasy points per game to about 9. So if you're looking at the Bengals offensive line, and if you have question marks about it, I think that makes you rank all the running backs a little bit lower.
Yeah, but there's also a point where you do have to value these Bengal running backs a little bit, because they are going to get opportunities as long as Marvin Lewis is the head coach. They have been consistently a top team in rushing attempts per game, even with a guy like A.J. Green on their team. So as long as Marvin Lewis is the coach, they're going to run the ball, and that's not going to stop. It just depends on who's going to get the carries. So
right. Well,
I don't know who to choose between Jeremy Hill and Joe Mixon. I actually ranked them right next to each other. You and I were discussing. I had them 29 and 30. Jeremy Hill being 29, Mixon being 30, and then you had them like split.
Yeah.
Almost evenly, like where I have them in the middle. You have one at 20. What was it, 21?
Yeah, I got Mixon 21, and then I have Hill 38.
So it's like I split the difference with the two guys and just put them both right next to each other, where you have them like one on one side of mine and one on the other side. So one on the higher end, one on the lower end, where I feel like it's kind of the same ranking.
Yeah, so we talked about this a little bit before the podcast, and I had told you that, yeah, I have Mixon ranked higher, and I think he's got obviously a better like boom potential and being like a really good running back compared to Jeremy Hill. But I think if I'm going to end up with one of these guys, I'm not going to reach for Joe Mixon, and I think there's so much hype around him right now that I think he gets a little bit overdrafted in leagues. So if I end up with one, I have a feeling I'm going to get Hill. Not that I'm seeking out Hill.
Touchdowns.
That's the thing. Like, if Mixon doesn't pan out as a rookie, I don't know how much faith you can have in a rookie running back all the time. We've had some guys that are stepped into the league and just dominated. Zeke, Howard, not Zeke Howard, Zeke Elliott and Jordan Howard last year obviously came in and just dominated, but I'm not super comfortable with rookie running backs. So I think if I end up getting one, I'll probably end up with Jeremy Hill. Let's see here. That was 21. Number 22, I've got Eddie Lacy, another crowded backfield, and I really like Pro-Size this year in a PPR especially. But I've got Lacy 22nd. I've got Pro-Size rated 41. I think I might be a little bit higher on him than a lot of people. But when it comes to Lacy, I just think he's the touchdown guy with less yards.
So you hate Thomas Rawls?
I'm not. I don't really like Rawls. I'm sorry. Just his injury. There's another injury guy. I just don't know how healthy he is and how he's going to be.
Soft tissue, so that's kind of more of a concern.
Well, and then with Pro-Size too, I feel like he's going to get. There were some rumors the coaching staff were saying he might get 50+ catches.
Yeah.
So if they're going to
be a guy that catches the ball.
If they're going to feed him that way, I like him getting yards. Like I said, I think Lacy's the guy that gets the touchdowns. I think he's a low end.
Regardless, though, their offensive line sucks. So he's going to have to put out a Marshawn Lynch type game every game in order to produce there. So that worries me as well. I almost think I might have him ranked too high right now. He's not a guy I'm going to be vying for, I can tell you, in fantasy leagues.
Yeah. Not going to set out to target him anyways?
No, because their offensive line's garbage.
Well, at 23, I think we both have this guy at 23 was Derek Henry. So of these running backs that I've recently talked about, I think Henry has the most upside, especially if Murray goes down. Derek Henry is a guy that we're talking right now as like a low-end RB2. Derek Henry's going to be a RB1 as soon as Murray either gets hurt or he leaves Tennessee. I don't think there's any denying that.
Yeah.
So if you want to hop on that train early this year and maybe catch him before the hype catches up to him, that's your guy. Rounding out the rankings at my last running back 2, I have LeGarrette Blount. I think we both have him at 24. I don't think there's any way he repeats what he did in 2016, but I still think he leads all of the Eagles running backs in touchdowns this year.
I had LeGarrette Blount at number 13.
Oh, saw your... No, I'm looking at it wrong. My bad. So we're on the opposite end of that. You have him as a high RB2. I have as a low RB2. So according to that, I'm not going to get him. But I want to give you a couple things to be leery on when it comes to Blount. So
and then I'll argue the opposite way because I have things as well.
Oh, perfect. So the NFC North rush defenses last year we're talking about anyways. So now with him being in the NFC North compared to the AFC East last year, whole different ballgame when it comes to rushing yards. So Dallas last year was first in rushing yards allowed. The New York Giants were tied for third in rushing yards allowed. And then the Redskins were the worst in the division at 24th. So there's one game there. But if you compare them to the AFC East defenses that Blount was going against, last year the Jets were number 11, so they were fine. But the Bills and the Dolphins were 29th and 30th. So those are the teams you play your most games against. And that competition is going to be a lot more stiff. And he's not on an offense that is churning out yards and points the way that the Patriots did. So I think it's a whole different scenario. I don't think he completely falls off the map, but he's not that guy that I'm not going to draft him in 2017 based on his 2016 numbers. I can't do it.
All right, you ready? Because I'm about to just shit on you.
Yeah. Bring some TP. Let's go.
LeGarrette Blount is not a guy who's ever been known for rushing yards. Is the first thing. That's not what he did at New England. He didn't rack up rushing yards. He scored 18 rushing touchdowns. So he's going to a team where 65% of their carries inside the 5-yard line went to one guy, and that was Ryan Matthews. Ryan Matthews ended up with 8 touchdowns last year. So that's going to leave LeGarrette Blount getting another 8 to 12 touchdowns this year because clearly Doug Peterson likes to give it to one guy. And he's also going to be consistently their first and second down guy because all they have there is Darren Sproles, Smallwood, who else? Nobody who's going to be a first and second down running back. Plus, he's getting a majority of their touchdowns. So he's easily going to get in the 8 to 12 touchdown range once again this year, which I think easily makes him a running back too. That's why I have him so high.
Yeah, and we still have him as a running back too, the both of us. And I like that stat. Like you said, Matthews was that goal line guy, and that's probably going to be Blount this year. So I see your point with that. And that's another good point too. When you draft Blount, you're really not drafting him probably for his yards. He's going to he's going to get you his points week in and week out with the touchdown. So I get that aspect of it. But I don't know. When I look at just offenses in general, I don't have as much faith in that Philly offense. So I don't know. I'm really happy with where I have him. I don't. Let me look at his ADP here real quick. So the consensus rankings has Blunt at 23, so pretty close to where I have him as the last pick in the 4th round. So basically an ADP in the 5th round. So that's actually, I mean, if you do your strategy and you take Fournette early, and if you could get Blunt in the 4th or the 5th, I think that's probably one of your kind of like draft strategies anyways with it.
Yeah, I'd like to have LeGarrette Blount on my team, that's for sure.
Yeah. Let's look at our the Twitter poll that we did. So before the podcast, we did a Twitter poll between who would you draft in a standard league non-PPR between Tevin Coleman, Mike Gillislee, and Joe Mixon. And since I didn't know when we were going to record this, I put a little bit too much time on it. But currently, Joe Mixon is at 44%, Mike Gillislee at 33, and Tevin Coleman at 23. So, what's the reason for your selection? Who do you go with? Obviously, you're going to go with your highest ranked one.
Am I?
Well, I'd hope so. Well, maybe not based on ADP.
I guess technically I am here. Again, this comes to value. In my opinion, I'm taking Tevin Coleman here, who is the lowest percentage of guys, but he's splitting carries. You have no idea what Mixon's going to get. He is a rookie guy. This rookie stuff always makes me nervous. People value rookies going into a fantasy football season way too high every year, and I think that's one of the biggest flaws of some people who are just like, their instant reaction is like, I got to have this guy. He was great in college. He's going to come in the NFL and automatically do well. And year after year, that proves more often than not that rookies aren't going to be that great their first year. So I'm not going to sit here and jump on Joe Mixon, especially as early as he's going. Gillislee, you have no idea what the hell you're going to get. With Tevin Coleman, I'm getting him in probably like the 5th, 6th round, if I'm guessing.
Yeah, I can take
correctly. And I'm getting a guy who's going to split carries pretty evenly, also catch the ball. Big play potential guy who's, explosive offense.
Yeah,
and a good spot.
Coleman's middle of the 6th right now.
Yeah, so, great value, love him. And I also have him ranked higher than
right.
those guys.
Yeah, I voted for Coleman as well. I was actually a little bit shocked with how this poll came out. I know everyone is super high on Mixon, but like we had talked about, I just can't get behind that. I do like Gillislee. Not gonna lie, I will seek him out in some drafts. But like I said, of all like the running back, real legit timeshares, I will seek out Coleman. And if he's there for me in the 6th round, I will. That'll be the quickest pick of the draft. I'm all about Tevin Coleman in that position. There was one person also on the Twitter poll that made a comment about the average draft position. We talked about that on that last episode where, sometimes the polls, you're going to take the guy with the highest ADP, but if you look at him in terms of like your perceived value, that does change your opinion on some guys every once in a while. So I'm glad that someone was able to comment that to us. There was some good interaction on that. So be sure to follow us on Twitter and join in next time if you haven't already on Twitter at LoadedBox. I think there's probably still time to vote on that poll if you'd like. Bang. So my other question, and you kind of screwed this question for me because you changed your rankings right before we started.
Yeah.
Dick move. So prior to this, you were somewhat high on Frank Gore, and he's not in your top 24 anymore. You don't have him as an RB2, but I'm assuming since he was flirting with that, he's still going to be close for you. So I have Frank Gore ranked as my 34th ranked running back.
Yep.
And we talk about how old he is and how the hell he's still doing this. So I want to know, like, aren't you scared of eventually his legs are going to fall off? And they drafted Marlon Mack. Are you a little bit scared of Marlon Mack outscoring him this year?
I am, but the more I play fantasy football, I have him ranked 26. The more I play fantasy football, the more I'm but realizing, and I think this is like all of experts' flaws as well, where they're overvaluing some of these rookies, undervaluing some of these guys who've been in the league every year for such a long time, who have been consistent. I'm I'm vaulting up guys like Mark Ingram, Jonathan Stewart, Frank Gore, because they are just consistent scorers every year, and they're just boring. So people tend to rank them a lot lower than what they should be. So I'm kind of a guy who's going to go with a guy who's consistent like that, boring, what's going to get you yards and touchdowns on a consistent basis, and you just don't realize that he's doing it because it's like so under the radar.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit higher on someone like that right now because I haven't seen it, and it annoys me because I'm anti-Frank Gore all the time.
Right.
But I'm probably jumping on his train the year that he falls apart. So
that's what I was just gonna say. Like I don't mind that strategy. Like you say, play the boring card. That's fine. You don't have to worry about those boom bust weeks. If everyone does what they're supposed to do in your roster, you're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
I've got Frank Gore ranked 34th, so that's low end RB3, and then I'm already on Marlon Mack, 10 positions later at number 44. So if I'm picking between the two, I'm going to pass on Gore. Like you said, at some point it's going to end for him. And I don't want to be that guy that ends up getting him. Regardless of that position, I'm not starting him. He might be a flex. I'm just more confident passing on Gore and then ending up with Marlon Mack, and hopefully he pans out for something. Like you said, it's not the boring for sure thing. It is a little bit more of a risk, but I don't know. I'm just a little bit more high on Mack at that point.
I think teams sometimes take too much risk versus reward, like risk and reward out of guys that they think are going to pop and end up having a major flaw in some of their lineups because of those reasons. When there's easily you could have drafted a guy like Mark Ingram or Frank Gore who's consistently putting up points, or Jonathan Stewart, who you can consistently put in your lineup is going to give you 12, 15 points every 12 or 10 to 12 points at least every week. So
yeah, and the thing with too, like, so Gore's been around the league long enough where he knows how to manufacture yards when things aren't there, and that offensive line isn't awesome by any means. So maybe it's a situation where a guy like Mack, who hasn't been in the system, struggles right away too. It's not like he's not in a situation like Zeke was last year, or Jordan Howard was, where he's playing behind a dominating running offensive line. So there could be a bit of a learning curve there, and he might struggle right away. So, I get your point there. I don't know. I feel like I'm you in this situation. I'm just killing on Frank Gore here, and he's kind of that model of consistency. He never misses games. He'll get you around that 10 fantasy points, which is fine. The touchdowns are probably going to be low, but when you're looking at low-end running back 3, I mean, you get what you get at that point. So let's jump into the listener questions. I know the first one here is a little bit of a tease for our next running back ranking, the top tier RB1 guys, but the listener question was, where do you have Leonard Fournette ranked as a running back and then overall as well in your rankings?
So, do you want me to hit it first?
Have at it.
I was about to jump on it right away anyways. So I'll give away my Leonard Fournette ranking. I have him ranked number 10 in my rankings, which is honestly probably lower than even I like him. Like, I like him higher than that, probably.
So right now, his consensus ranking is 12 with an ADP of the 8th pick in the second round.
I'm trying to temper my expectations on him, but I am more than comfortable taking... Oh, did you ask the next question or no? Oh, no. Wait, sorry.
You drunk?
Yeah, I'm a little drunk. No, I'm just over. So I'm ranked as number 10. As far as overall goes, I'm probably going to take him somewhere. I'm comfortable taking him as my number 1 running back in the early second round. So that's maybe in a 12-team standard league. Overall, I'm going to take him around somewhere between 13 and 16. I'm more than comfortable taking him in that spot as my number 1 running back and grabbing like an elite wide receiver in the first round, because that's basically my strategy this year. So, and I've discussed this multiple times. Everybody kind of knows who I'm picking this year. So, I'm more than comfortable having Leonard Fournette as my number 1 running back. And the guy hasn't played it down yet.
Right. That's what makes me nervous about him. But like we said, the Jaguars obviously have a plan for him if they took him number 4 overall, with all the holes that they have and the directions they could have went. To take a running back, the way the NFL's played right now and the way drafts go, to take him that high, they obviously have a plan for him. So I also have him around the same spot. I've got him as my 11th ranked running back, so he's my low-end RB1, top RB2.
Wow, that's higher than I thought you'd have him.
Yeah, I can't get over that fact. The more I've talked about it, I just feel like the Jaguars are really going to rely on him, just
Yeah.
often and early.
Plus, they
So
have a good a lot better offensive line than people think, and two inconsistent running backs that were there last year. So.
yeah, your overall ranking though is probably higher than mine. So I've got him in that 20 to 25 range. So I'm guessing
Yeah.
I won't end up with him in any fantasy in leagues. I think you're going to have to take him in the early second if you want him this year.
And I'm probably going to reach higher than having him as. I mean, I'll probably end up taking him over guys that I have ranked ahead of him, which I don't want to mention necessarily who they are, but I still think I'd reach for him higher than some other guys.
Yeah, and we'll go into the top tier ones in the next podcast as well. But I see what you're saying there. I mean, I don't think I'm going to end up with him, but I'm high on him. I like him, but I just think other people are so much higher on him that it's not going to be me that ends up with him.
Mostly me.
Probably you.
Yeah.
One more listener question here for today. And I don't know, I might have murdered this question, so I apologize if I didn't totally understand. Sometimes on Twitter, it's a little hard to completely get your point across in 140 characters, so I did my best with it. But at what round in fantasy drafts do you feel comfortable reaching for one of your guys?
It's a very vague question.
No, I know. I don't think it is. I think it's
like it could be what round depends on what player I'm reaching for. So like when I said Fournette, I'm comfortable reaching for him top of the second round over some of the guys I have ranked ahead of him.
I see what you did.
But what if I'm reaching for, I don't know, like a guy that, like your Gillisley or something like that, where I know Mitchell Renz is ranked above, like has him ranked higher, but he's still a later round pick, probably around the 4th or 5th round pick.
Yeah.
Is he going to reach for him for the top of the 4th round? So it depends on which guy, what specific player I'm talking about. So it's a tough question to answer.
I gotcha. So I went a little bit like a different angle with it. So the way I looked at it was, I want to draft 4 to 5 consistent guys. 4 to 5 consistent guys that I know I'm starting. I'm going to get my production from these guys. So these are the guys that I'm going to need to perform. So I want those 4 to 5 guys before I do like any reaches for guys that I'm really targeting. So I'm looking at maybe like round 6, where I'm looking at guys like those mid-round guys that I might have ranked a little bit higher than someone, and I don't want to miss out on them. I don't want to take that extra round to wait. So I'm thinking I want my 4 to 5 guys, probably 5. So I'm thinking like round 6 is kind of like my that sweet spot for me to actually say, you know what, it's time for me to target the guy that I want. I'm going to get him just because I want him on my team. That's how I took the question.
So you took the question is, when do you feel comfortable to start reaching for guys compared to when do you feel comfortable to reach for a specific player that you like?
Yeah.
Which is how I'm taking it.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at each and every guy in different situations.
Yeah, I wasn't.
There's another running back that I'm more than comfortable taking him way too early maybe a lot earlier in the first round than other people are as well. So I might take 2 running backs right away in the first round. I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, lots of strategies. That's the good thing about being in a lot of leagues, though. You can do a different strategy in each one and see which one stays out for you.
Specifically, and I say every week that I'm like, I like Leonard Fournette, but I'm not going to. I like him, and he's on my radar, but I'm not going to specifically zone in on the fact that I have to take him. If there's better value or a better player there, don't get locked in on a guy and take him just because you want to take him. Just because you have him like that high, like I do. I mean, don't get locked in on a specific guy for just the reason that you do like him, because there can be other guys that are better that you're passing up on just because you're zoned in.
Right. I'm kind of thinking like, so let's say you have like, that'd be too high for him. Let's just say hypothetically, this might not be that realistic, but let's say that you have the 7th or 8th pick in a 12-team league. You're saying like, oh shit, I'm in the middle of the league here. I don't know if someone's going to take Fournette in the second round before I can. So you're obviously not going to take Fournette in the first round.
I'm not going to reach for Fred at that point.
Fred?
Fournette, I said.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't think I said Fred.
It sounded like Fred. Who the hell's Fred? But I think that's the point being made there. It's like, yeah, you want Fournette, but if you get, it all really depends on what pick you get in the draft. Like if you're that middle round guy, you don't think he's going to last until the middle of the second round. Some people will be like, well, this is my chance to get him.
Exactly.
First round's way too early to be doing that.
Don't grab a guy just because you want to grab, just because you you're at a certain spot and you think he's going to go in between your pick and the next pick at any point in any round.
Yeah.
If there's a better value there, take that guy.
Right. I like how we were able to merge the two listener questions there. We got Fournette, we got the round reaching, and we were able to put them together.
Round reaching. I love reach rounds.
Another great fantasy team name you could probably.
Yeah, I was gonna say we should turn that into a fantasy name.
Yeah. Well, we're streaming D's.
Yeah, screaming D's and reaching arounds.
Got anything else you want to enlighten us with today?
I think I'm gonna do a mock draft today. I'm kind of in the mood to do a mock draft. Haven't really been into one yet, and I kind of want to see where guys are going and start to get a feel for it. So
Nice. My goal for later today is to start on my rankings for my touchdown only league.
yeah.
So,
And what do we have coming up? Potential shit talking about Tyreek Hill.
oh
podcast?
yes. So previewing the next couple of podcasts at some point here. So at one of our next podcasts, we'll obviously break down running backs 12 through 1 or 1 through 12, however you want to word it. And then we're going to do a joint podcast where we have the great Tyreek Hill debate. So
Yes.
those will be fun. Then we've got Vikings training camp coming up. So we've got
That's
some.
coming fast.
We've got
It's like
some.
a week and a half.
I know. So
Wow.
we got some really cool content ideas that we're going to do for that. So be sure to follow us on Twitter. Check out everything we'll have going on related to the Vikings training camp on there at Loaded Box. As always, we're available on iTunes by searching Loaded Box. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe and review. We appreciate that. Thanks to all of those who have. With that, why don't you send us out?
I am the danger.
I am the one who knocks.